accept that if we extrapolate nationally the Jay report on Rotherham and other reports on Telford and Oxford, there appear to have been upwards of 250,000 young white girls raped in this century, very largely by Muslim men. And given these girls are usually raped several times a day for years, so, my lords, what is the government's answer to the Chief Constable of Northumbria, who has just said that there is every likelihood that these grooming gangs are operating in every one of our major cities? So, my lords, what is the government doing to prosecute those in authority who turned a blind eye to all this because they were afraid of being Islamophobic and so on? And what is it doing to compensate and help these victims mentally?
My Lords, I really refute the fact that the government is turning a blind eye to those in authority. Sorry, that those in authority are turning a blind eye to this. Noble Lords from across the House have outlined the various child sexual abuse perpetrations in various parts of the country. And, my Lords, one thing we can say above all else is what these people target is vulnerability. It's not specific to race, creed or colour, it's vulnerability.
Now, Peter, that video of that speech was a few years ago, but something amazing has been happening in the UK over the last 7 days. I'm not sure what sparked it, but Elon Musk, the world's richest man, the owner of X, formerly Twitter, and the most followed man on Twitter with more than 200 million followers, has taken a very intense interest in the UK, especially around the issue of what is euphemistically called grooming gangs. I don't like that because it really is a euphemism. It hides the atrocious reality. These are serial rape gangs that rape girls night after night. They extort and blackmail, and they're girls, they're not women. They're as young as 9 or 10 or 11 years old. Elon Musk has taken a passionate interest in this outrage, this scandal. Tell us about it. Well, I mean, you're there. I mean, I'm here and I'm watching it with amazement. Tell us about Elon Musk in the UK over the last week.
Well, first, I remember that interview, Ezra. I remember being there right in front of the Lords in one of your many visits, and I know Lord Pearson has met up with you on nearly all of those visits, and it is he's found a privilege to meet with you as you speak truth worldwide. But that Elon Musk, so I looked at my phone, it was the 1st of January, and what a happy new year present you could get. Elon Musk had posted free Tommy Robinson. So that not only had he posted that, but he had pinned it to the top of his profile, and he pinned it for 2 days. This caused, as you can imagine, a lot of ructions in the UK political system, the UK media system, the UK establishment that were in sheer panic at Elon Musk mentioning the name of the person who cannot be named, Tommy Robinson. So you've got that on one side. And then it started that Elon Musk started highlighting the failure of the grooming gangs. I think partially this came from Oldham Council, a council in the middle of England. The council officials had called for an investigation into grooming gangs in Oldham, which is Muslim Pakistani rape gangs that have happened since 1975, was a Rotherham Advertiser first post. So we're looking at 50 plus years in the UK. And Elon Musk had highlighted this failure of the government to have an independent inquiry into this area in Oldham called by the council. I think that was possibly the lightning rod. Now, Tommy has done Rape of Britain series. He's up to about number 5, highlighting this injustice and making this a personal issue, talking to the girls who face this issue, not just the numbers, which Noor Pierce talked about, 250,000. Sarah Champion, the MP for one of those areas, has talked about up to 1 million girls have been affected. This is industrial scale sexual abuse of white girls across the country by Muslim Pakistani men, and therefore the police, local authority, child services have all turned a blind eye to this for fear of a race riot. That's the term that's been used by a number of officials. Elon, of course, doesn't really give a damn about any of that. So he just goes for it. And he highlights this. And I know that whenever we started Hearts of Oak in 2020, we wanted to highlight this in our first petition, which got 100,000 within 3 days. We had a government debate on the deportation of a lot of these evil individuals. If they had dual nationality, they should be deported. The government, of course, ignored that. We also had a petition to call for the release of a government report on this. The government had failed to release that. We were able to force that to be put out in December 2020. And of course, Lord Pearson's been talking about this since 2018. He's been highlighting the issue of Islam and the incompatibility of Islam and the freedoms we have in the West, especially look at the freedoms of women, the freedoms of those who are non-Muslim. And he's talked about that since 2015 at least, and grooming gangs since 2018. And is that speech that he talked about 250,000 girls have been affected by this and millions of rapes. And you look at the stories, you talk to these girls, I've talked to quite a number of them, and it is harrowing. And Lord Pearson seems to be the only one, really apart from Baroness Cox, who stood up in the House of Lords and has highlighted this. And because he has highlighted it, he has been attacked, he has been criticised in the media, in politics. They have tried to eject him from the House of Lords for linking what is happening in these rape gangs to Islam, and he's laid it out, and they've tried to attack him for that and change the language so you can no longer talk about Islam, you have to talk about Islamism. It is huge. And Elon Musk in the last 6 days has actually shone a bigger spotlight on this than we've been able to do since 2012, from when this was on the front page of the Times.
You know, it was on New Year's Day. I saw that tweet by Elon Musk that said, "Free Tommy Robinson." And as you know, we try and help Tommy. We don't just journalism about it. We're crowdfunding his lawyers, and I try and give a little help. I'm a former lawyer myself. So I wrote a little letter on Twitter, and I did a show about this. I said, "Dear Elon Musk, here's what's going on." To my surprise, he saw it. I mean, I don't know how there's so much content on Twitter, and there's so many people trying to get Elon Musk's attention. I do not know how I managed to cut through the clutter. I mean, I can only imagine it's just, there's a million people a day, probably. But he saw it, he reposted it. 41 million people saw my little summary. 41 million saw my little summary of Tommy's case. And I think I don't know if you know where the word scapegoat comes from. It's a biblical idea that you put the sins on the goat and drive the goat out. And the scapegoat is where all the innocent people deposit their sins on the animal to bear the sins away. That's the ancient biblical source of scapegoat. And Tommy is the scapegoat. All the sins, all the omissions, all the people turning a blind eye, let's put it on Tommy. He's a ruffian. He's a convicted criminal. Did you know he served time in jail for violence? All these things, or whatever it was. I mean, he got into a fight. And if we just hate Tommy Robinson, we can distract from our own sins. And the establishment that covered it, I read the Commission of Inquiry into Rotherham. It's a shocking document. I think it was actually quite revealing. I think you'll learn a lot from it. It'll terrify you. And you can search for the word racism. It's an electronic document. You Alt-F, you type in RACIS, racism, racist. It pops up again and again. When people were asked, why didn't you say anything? They said, I was worried about being called racist. So and I think that's such an important thing here. There's a dynamic, and you alluded to it. 80+% of the rapists are Pakistani Muslim men, and 90+% of the rape victims are working class white girls. And I contend, Peter, that if it was white rapists and white girls, or Pakistani rapists and Pakistani girls, this would be a mainstream story. And certainly if it was white rapists and Pakistani girls. But because it was foreign, visible minority, religious minority rapists and working class white girls that nobody cares about, that perfect storm of DEI rapes, of woke rapes, is why everyone was afraid.